Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Dr. Laura Wade. I'm a clinical psychologist and a ADHD specialist. And I'm joined here today with just to put together a little video about ADHD coaching. And I'm so happy to be talking to my colleague of quite long standing now, Dr. Julie Osborn.
Thanks, Laura. That's a lovely introduction. And I don't know how long ago it is since we met back in the day. So quite a long time.
Quite a long time. Julie, could you just tell me a bit about yourself and your professional work?
Yeah, so I'm a neurodiversity coach specialising in working with people with ADHD, and I've had my own business now for 10 years. Before that, I've worked in the public sector, both in the NHS and in further education, doing various things.
Wonderful. I mean, Julie, I'm so interested to hear your thoughts, particularly about ADHD coaching. There seems to be an explosion of ADHD coaches. How can somebody who's looking for an ADHD coach find a good one?
It's a good question, and certainly, it's pretty overwhelming, the choice. So to be able to filter out some people that you want to talk to, that's a good idea. So I always suggest people talk to 3 coaches rather than hundreds. So how can you get that short list? Well, I think the key things to look for are perhaps somebody that's had some training. They're trained as a coach. The title coach is not protected, so basically anybody can decide to set themselves up and call themselves a coach. So ideally find somebody that's had some training, somebody who's perhaps got an accreditation. It could be with the International Coaching Federation or EMCC. Those sorts of things suggest that people have invested in quality and are looking to develop themselves as professionals. Another thing I always think is helpful is to find out, if a person has supervision, if they're, under supervision with somebody, and how they're looking at ongoing professional development. So those are a lot of the things that you can do, maybe from a sort of an initial search, looking at websites or perhaps coaching directories as a way to begin to sort of identify useful people.
That's so useful to know, Julie. Kind of going back to that, what sort of questions would you recommend that somebody ask a potential coach?
Yeah, and that's good to think of. And I would suggest that it's useful to have a free initial 20-minute conversation with somebody before committing to signing up for a program, for example, while some other coaches offer a one-off session to experience coaching. And, to ask them about things like what training they've had, how they like to work, what their approach is. A key question I get asked, which I think is quite useful, is why are you an ADHD coach? What's prompted you to, become an ADHD coach? And that often reveals people's motivations for doing that. There's a lot of people who are using their lived experience to help others, and that's a really helpful way of using that. But there's other people, perhaps like me, that have come from a very neurodivergent family. My brothers, sisters, my parents, very neurodivergent. And again, having that close proximity has given me a lot of insight into people. So that's another way that people have developed, knowledge. I would ask about supervision. You could ask who they get supervision with. That's often quite a useful indicator of their investment in their personal development. Another question you might ask, what course have you done recently and what did you get from that? So a lot of coaches are investing by doing short courses, which can be really helpful. So those kind of things are really helpful. And on a logistical, practical level, I would ask about insurance, whether they're insured, what their cancellation policy is. What I'm fearful of is somebody signing up for a big long coaching course without there being a refund policy. So I would, get that from the outset so that if it's not working out, you're not investing and potentially losing money.
Yeah, those are all really useful things to know. That sounds like kind of what your green flags were. What would you only red flags, I suppose? You'd say like things to be aware of for a potential coaching supervisee.
I think that's a good one. And I think one thing that I've heard is sort of impossible promises, sign up for me for a session of coaching and we will, we'll sort out your ADHD. So I think that's a big red flag, having sort of a guaranteed outcome.
I think that's a red flag for anyone working in the ADHD space, doctors, psychologists, anything.
Absolutely. But I've heard people, over promising and over offering, and perhaps they've got a bit in sales mode when they're kind of like that. But I think, what people might look for is somebody perhaps helping you to set realistic expectations, helping you to look at what might come out of the coaching in a more realistic way. So I would also be noticing how you felt after a call. If you felt anxious or uncertain, then listen to that. I know people with ADHD have often lost a trust in their own judgment, but I would really encourage people to notice how they feel, and if there's something that's not feeling right, then really listen to that and act on that. So perhaps after that you might go back with some further follow-up questions, or usually, a good coach would be happy to do that and offer people chance just to process the call. And if there's any, further information, then, to invite email sort of questions in there. So
I think that's really good advice, Julie. Going back to that kind of question about sort of over promising, what kind of outcomes would you say people can expect from, say, 6 to 8 sessions of coaching, or even a bit longer?
Yeah, I mean, people often come along with a list of more executive dysfunction type challenges that they're keen to work on: time management, procrastination, motivation, getting things finished. So that's often the things that people think that they will get out of coaching. Indeed, they absolutely can. So they can identify some strategies that are just right for them. There's no one strategy that's going to fit everyone. So I think coaching can be really powerful in that it can be a discussion about what's going to help that very specific individual at that specific time. So it's not following a set pattern. It's about having a discussion so that person can come up with some great ways of managing their ADHD that suits them. Often there's some starting off things and outcomes that are identified, and as the coaching program typically goes on, people are often looking at more deep-seated changes, perhaps being more accepting of their ADHD, being more accepting that their brain does work differently, and it's no point going in the neurotypical direction because that's not going to be right for them. So perhaps having a sense that they can accept who they are, absolutely work with their amazing strengths, and those mind shifts, that's quite hard to say, can be a really powerful way that coaching can really help people develop confidence, really feel confident that yes, they've got significant challenges, but actually there are ways of coping with that.
Oh, yeah, totally. Julie, any other tips that you'd give for somebody seeking an ADHD coach before we finish today?
Yeah, I again go back to that trust in your instinct. And if something isn't feeling right, say something, okay, endure the sessions. Any good ADHD coach worth their salt has enough referrals. And if the person is not experiencing a good sense of that they're getting some benefit out, so say that to the coach. Hopefully the coaching process involves a check-in at the start of the session or even between sessions. So having that conversation, there might be a way that the process can be adjusted. And if not, then it can be a discussion that, the coaching journey has ended with that particular coach and it's time to move on to somebody else. And that can be done in a very constructive and supportive way.
Yeah, wonderful. Julie, thank you so much for your insights today. This has been brilliant.
Thank you, Laura. See you soon.